Hello everyone and welcome to this week's game development log video diary, and this week I'm going to be explaining the new combat system in Soccer 1. Before I do that though, there are just a couple of other updates this week. Firstly, you don't get the cash rewards straight away after killing a mob anymore, you now have to loot it first, which I think makes a little bit more sense, and I also added in this new crop field model into the game. However, the main thing that I worked on this week was the combat system, and I made a whole load of changes to it. The first thing that I did was to add some structure into the attack system, and I added different tiers of attacks into the game. So take these 4 base attacks here for example. Each of these attacks now has an upgraded version of itself, a second tier version of the attack. Each of these second tier attacks also has an improved version, which is the tier 3 version of the attack, and so on and so on. In total, each attack can have up to 6 tiers. So in the game there are now a whole load of these attack trees, and I know they're not really trees, but I can't think of a better word for them. In reality right now the attack trees in the game look something like this because I haven't made that many attacks yet, but let's just pretend for a minute that there are already this many attack trees in the game. The idea now is that every weapon in the game has a different combination of these attacks available to it. So you can see here for example that all of these weapons have different available attacks. This means that large melee weapons could have more crushing attacks, magic staffs could have more mage attacks, small light weapons could have more stabby and slashy attacks, and some weapons could even have attacks which are totally unique to them and available to no other weapons in the game. But it's not just every weapon that has a different combination of attacks, every single material combination for every single weapon has a slightly different combination of attacks. So, if you remember, every weapon in the game is made from one of 10 primary materials and one of 10 secondary materials, and so each weapon has 100 possible material combinations, and each one of these material combinations can potentially have a unique combination of available attacks. It's not just random though, there is some structure to the combination of attacks that are available to each weapon. Take this tier 1 version of the greatsword here for example. With the lowest possible primary material of brass, it might just have a couple of available attacks. If I increase the primary material though, more and more attacks become available. Increasing the primary material of a weapon will always add new attacks, and it would never remove any of the previously available attacks, so the higher the primary material, the better it is. And the attacks that are available for each primary material would be something that I would have chosen and set in the item editor for each weapon. For the secondary material, however, it is slightly different. The secondary material determines which attacks are blocked, so if we go through the secondary materials here, you can see that the attacks that are blocked for each material appear to be a little bit more random. Again, I will have chosen which material blocks which attacks in the item editor, but unlike with the primary material, a higher secondary material is not always better. So, a greatsword with a tier 6 primary material would have these attacks available, but if it has a tier 3 secondary material, then these attacks will be blocked. So these are the attacks that are actually available for this particular material combination of this weapon. And I can give you another example of this in the game with this scythe weapon. At the moment you can see that I have these attacks available, and notice how the different attack trees have gaps between them. If I now unequip the scythe and upgrade the primary material, which obviously you wouldn't usually be able to do like this is just for demonstration, and then if I equip the scythe again, you can see that I have a couple more attacks, because increasing the primary material always adds more attacks. However, if I now upgrade the secondary material, you can see that I've lost an attack from the first attack tree, but I've gained an extra tier to this attack tree here. If I try upgrading the secondary material again, you can see that I've now lost a whole attack tree, but the other 2 attack trees now have an extra tier available. So a higher primary material is always good, you get more attacks and the stats are better, so you'd always try to get the highest primary material that you can afford. But the secondary material is more about preference, deciding which attack combinations you prefer and which attacks suit your style of play better. Let's now have a look at the attacks themselves. So I currently have these 2 attack trees available to me, one going up to tier 3 and one going up to tier 2. At the moment though, only the base attacks can actually be used, and you can see that all of the other higher tier attacks are currently greyed out. Now, there's no mana or cooldown times for attacks in this combat system, so these attacks need something else to unlock them, and what they need is 3 charges. To give an attack 1 charge, you need to successfully carry out the previous tier of the attack. So to give this attack here 1 charge, I would need to successfully hit with this attack, and to give this attack 1 charge, I would need to successfully hit with this attack. If I don't hit anything with the base attack, then nothing happens, but if I damage another player or mob with this attack, you can see that the tier 2 attack now has 1 charge. If I hit the mob again, it gets a 2nd charge, so now it just needs 1 more. I can still miss the base attack though, and nothing will happen, it will never lose charges, and I can still carry out other available attacks, so I could use the other base attack to start charging up the other tier 2 attack here. Whenever I feel like it though, I can carry out that 3rd successful base attack, and if you look at the tier 2 attack icon, you can see that it unlocks with a nice animation when I get that 3rd and final charge. So that tier 2 attack is now unlocked, and I can use it whenever I'm ready, but I can still do the base attack if I want, and I can even unlock the other tier 2 attack by doing the other base attack. But when I feel like the time is right, I can carry out that more powerful tier 2 attack. It now needs charging again, but because it was a successful hit, the tier 3 attack now has 1 charge. So now I can just keep going, and I can do the base attacks to unlock the tier 2 attack again, and then I can carry out the tier 2 attack to charge the tier 3 attack, and now I just need to do the tier 2 attack 1 more time, and then the tier 3 attack will be unlocked. So I unlock the tier 2 attack again, successfully hit with that, and now I've unlocked the tier 3 attack, which I can use and do a whole load more damage. And of course, it doesn't just have to stop at tier 3. If you use more powerful weapons, then you'll have a load more attacks available. So here I've got 3 attack trees which all work in the same way, and as you can see, I'm just about to unlock the tier 4 attack on the first tree, and this attack is a powerful new electric attack which I added in this week. And I know it perhaps looks a little bit confusing at the moment with all the different attacks and their different charges, but you get used to it very quickly, and it's really a very simple concept. Also, you'd have to be playing the game for weeks and weeks to get a weapon powerful enough to have this many available attacks. When you first start playing the game, you'd have a weapon with 1 or 2 attacks maximum, so you'd get eased into the combat system very slowly. There is of course going to be a lot of strategy involved with this sort of combat. You might think that you would just want to charge up your high tier attacks and then use them as soon as possible, and that might be fine against an easy opponent, but if you're fighting another player or a high leveled mob, then it might not be good enough. Your opponent is probably going to be able to heal, so unless you one-shot them with your high tier attack, they're probably going to be able to heal up before you've charged it up again. So often it would be beneficial to charge up multiple high tier attacks from multiple attack trees and keep them kind of stored up. Then when the time is right, you can carry out a combo of big attacks and hopefully damage your opponent faster than they can heal up. To make sure that your combo of big attacks works, you might first want to work your opponent down to a low health, giving you more chance of killing your opponent with your big attacks. You might think then that your opponent should always keep their health topped up and heal whenever possible, but it can actually be beneficial to let your health drop a bit before healing up. For a start, you'll have limited heals, and things like health potions actually heal you more when you have lower health, so it's more efficient to wait until your health is low before drinking a health potion. You also actually hit slightly harder the lower your health is, so being at low health can be advantageous. It's of course more risky though, because your opponent might have some big attacks stored up that could kill you before you have time to heal, but if you know the game well enough, then you should have some idea of when your enemy has charged up his big attacks, and so you should have a good idea of when it's safe to let your health get a bit lower and when you need to keep your health topped up to max. It's also interesting to note that the time it takes for an attack to become available again isn't based on mana cost or its cooldown time, but it's instead based on your skill and the choices that you make. It depends on how consistent and accurate you can be with hitting those lower tier attacks, and it also depends on when you choose to use those lower tier attacks, which would help to charge the higher attacks. It also means that hitting those higher tiered attacks becomes very, very important. For example, here you can see that I'm very close to unlocking a tier 5 attack, which would be extremely powerful and would give a massive advantage in a proper battle. All I need to do now is to hit with the tier 4 attack and I'll have that massive advantage, but obviously my opponent would be running all over the place, and if I happen to miss that tier 4 attack, then I don't unlock the tier 5 attack. The tier 4 attack now needs charging again, and that will take at least another 40 successful attacks. So although the moment-to-moment combat is going to be fairly fast-paced, the battles are going to involve a lot of strategy and in some cases could take a fair bit of time. The combat in this game is all about slowly working your opponent down, charging and storing up those big attacks, and then when the time is right, finishing off your opponent with a combo of big attacks. Also, one final thing, when you go out of combat for a while, your attack charges reset, so you wouldn't be able to store up a load of big attacks and then go into a PvP battle. You would always start each PvP battle from scratch. So that is it for this week's extra long devlog video. You can see more about the combat system in tomorrow's behind the scenes devlog video, and you can see updates during the week on any of my social media pages. But yeah, thank you guys very much for watching this video. Do subscribe if you haven't already. Have an awesome week, and I will see you all next time.